Hi guys, so my name is Caitlin Tong. I'm an SI leader for Dr. Joseph's class. So for week 6 video 2, we're going to be talking about circulatory systems, which Dr. Joseph covered in lecture 16, if you wanted to cross-reference that material. So a brief overview of what this video is going to be about. We're going to talk about the limits of diffusion, and from there, we're going to learn why these limits of diffusion led to the development of a circulatory system. And within there, what are the components of a circulatory system, and how this developed into an open system versus closed system. And so within closed systems, all the different veins and arteries. And finally, we're going to talk about single circulation systems versus double circulation. And at the end, I have 2 multiple choice questions for you guys to test your knowledge. So the limits, so first, what is diffusion, right? So diffusion is the spread of really anything from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. So this could be water, this could be nutrients, minerals, whatever it is, right? But obviously diffusion is really, really important for life, as it helps transport all these things that I just mentioned. And so the first limit for diffusion is that organisms, it requires organisms to stay small, right? So if you see here, the example that we have is cells, right? So the reason why we don't have massive blobs of cells walking around is because of diffusion, and because we really need to maintain that high surface area to mass ratio so that diffusion can continue to happen. The second limit is that organisms must have thin tissue if they do want to have efficient diffusion. And so this again allows for high surface area to mass ratio. And we see this in platyhelminthes with that picture. And so the third thing is circulatory systems. So this is what we're really interested in this video. So circulatory systems developed to really overcome these limits of diffusion, and it helps transport fluid around the body faster. And circulatory systems also link specialized exchange surfaces. So for example, our small intestine. So what makes up a circulatory system? The first thing is circulatory fluid. So the circulatory fluid is used to transport nutrients and dissolved gas. This might be oxygen and carbon dioxide. And it's either blood or hemolymph. So we're going to go into the distinction of these two later on, but just keep in mind that they are different. So tubes. So of course, you know, like with any circulatory system, you need tubes to carry the fluid around. And so the length can really vary depending on the circulatory system you're talking about. And finally, you need a pump, and in our situation in animals, that is a heart. So let's talk about open system versus closed system. So in an open circulatory system, you have hemolymph. And so hemolymph is just circulatory fluid that is not confined to the vessels, right? So hemolymph is actually pumped into the body cavity. And so from there, the nutrients then really diffuse throughout the body tissue. So the second thing that is unique to open systems is that they have short vessels, just because, right, the hemolymph is going into the heart, pumped back out, and just basically dumped into the tissue, right? There's not too much need to have long vessels. And so the third thing is that the heart pumps and creates a negative pressure, which will pull the hemolymph back into the heart. And so in closed systems, you'll see that it actually has blood, and as I mentioned earlier, blood is unique because it is confined to the vessels, right? So it's going to be separate from the body cavity. It's not really going to bleed into your tissue. And if it did, I would say probably go check with your doctor. Anyways, so moving on. Closed systems also have long vessels, which can be further branched into small or large veins or just vessels. And of course, it also has a heart. So as I mentioned earlier, closed systems have lots of different types of vessels, right? So let's kind of go into them. So we have 3 kinds: arteries, capillaries, and veins. So the heart will pump blood out, and it'll go into the arteries. And so because the blood is coming straight from the heart, it tends to have high pressure, and as a result, the arteries have developed thicker walls compared to veins. So from there, the blood will go into the capillaries, which are much smaller, thinner, and highly branched. So capillaries are really in your body tissue, and this is where the majority of your diffusion is happening. And so finally, once it's kind of diffused all of its nutrients, all the osmoregulation has happened, your blood will go back into the veins and it'll get carried back to the heart. So one thing I do want to kind of go into a little bit is that veins will undergo kind of muscle contractions, and they have valves to help move the blood back to the heart, right? Because at this point, the blood has gone through the arteries, it's gone through the capillaries, and it has very low pressure, so it doesn't necessarily have all that force to get it back to the heart. And so it has these additional things to help move it. One thing that I do want to clarify is that veins don't undergo muscle contraction so much as there are muscles next to the veins that contract and then force the blood back up. So just a really quick clarification. And again, valves are there to prevent backflow. So some additional background just to kind of help reinforce this information. This is just a really quick, just a really simple equation. So pressure equals force over area. So when we're thinking about arteries, capillaries, and veins, we can see how this equation really correlates and really, I guess, like matches the information you've been given. So here at this graph, if you look at it, you can see area, velocity, pressure. Velocity we're going to say is similar to force. They're not actually, but we're just going to, for the purpose of this explanation, we're going to say they are. So as you can see, when pressure is high and the area is low, like it is in arteries, your force is going to be really high, right? So like we said, arteries have high force. But in capillaries, which is highly branched, you have lots of area, the velocity is much lower and the force is much lower. And again, the pressure is also, as you can see, it's reducing. And finally, in our veins, we have really low pressure. The velocity is kind of in the middle, and I would say that's due to the muscle contractions and the backflow. And the area is, again, really small, is really low. But really, all of this kind of correlates, and it just kind of helps to reemphasize what we've just learned. So let's now talk about single circulation versus double circulation systems. So in a single circulation system, the process is the heart will pump blood to the respiratory surface, and there CO2 will get dropped off, O2 will get picked up, and so this oxygenated blood will go into the body tissue, perform diffusion, all those wonderful things, and then it'll get pumped back to the heart. So the system is usually in fish. It usually is run by a 2-chamber heart and is relatively low pressure. So now let's look at double circulation. And so the process here is that the heart will will pump one time. The blood will then go to the lungs and perform the CO2 drop off, O2 pickup, and the oxygenated blood will go back to the heart. Heart will pump a second time and send this oxygenated blood into the capillaries to do diffusion, and finally back to the veins where it'll get sent back to the heart. So the system is powered by a 3-chamber or 4-chamber heart. The 3-chamber or 4-chamber is really just dependent on the species. And so one thing we do want to say is that the first pump is typically lower pressure and the second pump is high pressure. And so these are in just frogs and things of the like. So for our first question, which of the following pair is correct? I'll give you guys a couple seconds to do that. So the answer is D, long vessels and a closed circulatory system. So question 2, where does the most diffusion occur? So the answer is C, capillaries. And I just want to clarify really quickly in case anyone got confused. The answer is not D, because hemolymph is a fluid and diffusion does not occur in just the fluid. It occurs between you know, the fluid and something else, right? So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching the video. If you saw my last video on tetrapods, I put a bunch of weird frogs in. This time I decided to put the pygmy shrew in because it actually has the fastest heartbeat of any animal. Oh, sorry, of any mammal, at 1,200 beats per second, which I thought was kind of fun. So yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you guys later.